Hello everyone and welcome to Trending in My Life. This week I'm looking for somewhere free to go to occupy some time. In London there's lots of attractions that cost £25–30 entry fee, but I found a museum on the outskirts in a place called Forest Hill that has a museum, gardens and an animal walk. So join me and I'll tell you all about it as we go along. So come with me as we explore the Horniman Museum and Gardens. It has a beautiful glass house at the back, and tucked away there's an animal walk, which was the first place I decided to explore. It's quite popular with families with children as it's all free to go in, and here we see the llamas. They were busy eating the grass, and there's the brown one at the back making his way up, just being nosy and wondering what I'm doing, and come to be with his friend. Next there was a big cage with rabbits in, some regular sized rabbits like that, but there was also an absolutely giant one at the back. Then there was some sheep in a field that was on a slant of a slope, which made it quite interesting because you could get a good view of the animals. And this huge one, making his way down here, was going to walk right across in front of me. I thought, what a lovely combination of the black feet and face and all the fluffy white fur in between. And he definitely noticed me looking at him, and he had a look at me too. Then there was quite a lot of sort of stable parts, but there were no animals in it. The only thing that I noticed was the two magpies, because two magpies means good luck. And on my way back towards the museum, I passed a beautiful bandstand. I don't know whether they hold bands concerts in the summer, but it was lovely. And there was 2 deck chairs in a field. I can't imagine anyone was going to sit there because it was way too chilly. Now I'm inside the museum, and this is the World Gallery, which must have been things that Frederick Horniman collected from around the world. This is one of those museums which is basically a collection of all different things that took the fancy of the person who bought them in the first place. It seemed quite a thing for rich Victorian people to go travelling and collecting things and then leave them to the cities and towns they lived in as a gift which got turned into a museum. I wasn't really looking at anything in particular, I was just wandering around all the cases. This tree is a giving tree, and children could write wishes on them. There were quite a few outfits from different places in the world. Some masks. Some of the masks were quite scary actually, and there was 2 or 3 school parties going around when I was in there, and the children were really tiny. I thought, wow, I hope this doesn't give them nightmares. But clearly it's just exposing them to all different things in the world. There were a lot of display screens showing videos, and sometimes that played havoc with trying to film the cases because you got the reflection of them everywhere. Oh, this is the musical gallery where they had instruments from all over the world, which was really interesting. These ones in the first place were ones played at weddings, and some beautiful pianos. Some were behind glass, but some were out, obviously not to touch, but out in the open. These ones were out in the open. And there were lots of drums. I'm not one for reading all the signs in museums. I like to just wander and look at things and absorb what I've seen. I think either you're a person that will spend hours and hours and read every single sign, or you're like me and you just sort of wander. But yes, I particularly like this music gallery because it was so interesting. Harps there, different harps. Some of the things were more modern, but a lot of the things were very old and just very different because they've been from different countries in the world. And these are all band instruments, very shiny. And this was supposed to be, I think, the biggest tuba that they had in the collection, which obviously is enormous. Now I'm out in the gardens and having a wander round. The gardens are set out in a certain way. They have like all medicinal plants in one area, and one part of the garden is for plants that provide dye to put in materials as well. Basically at this time of year I was wandering around and trying to find some pretty flowers, because so much of it at this time of the year is turning to seed. Oh, and there was a butterfly, part of the gardens was a butterfly garden, which is where I am there. And they did have that beautiful pink flower in the middle. Oh, and at the side. In these gardens they had a variety of benches, and we're coming up now to some really special ones that were particularly carved, and I thought these were absolutely beautiful. Here we go. One's called the sand bench and one's called the buffalo bench, and this one is the sand bench. And here comes the buffalo bench. The detail was amazing in them to be carved on there. And then as I walked up here, I wanted to show you the regular benches that are in and around the gardens, so that you could see the huge difference between those special ones. But this is the normal bench that's around. Quite often people pay to have a bench put in with a little plaque in memory of someone. I was rather liking this dark red on these plants. It's funny that when there isn't a lot of flowers, you're looking for unusual ones or just little ones that are still in flower at this time of year. This beautiful archway would obviously look different in summer. This is the dye garden. That's what I was talking about. Apparently these plants here were grown to dye materials. Have no idea these days what you'd use to dye materials. And I thought it was quite interesting. I kind of expected it to be a blaze of like dark purples or deep reds and things, and there wasn't a lot of that, but I reminded myself that I was going around in autumn, fall, so if I'd have visited in maybe July I would probably have seen that. I'll have to remember to do that next year just to see what it's like. But I thought it was interesting that they had a whole garden set up just for plants for dyeing things. And the red one in the background there is a fuchsia, and lots of people grow fuchsias in the garden. They're sort of red on the outside, a bright red, and purple on the inside. There we go, there's sort of a bell, hanging bell shape. And I'd seen them in loads of gardens and grown up seeing them, and I never knew that they were used for dyeing things, so that was quite interesting. That rectangle in the middle here is a pond. But you couldn't get to it, they got it chained off, and it said it was very deep water, which I found sort of fascinating because usually a garden pond isn't very deep water. And Frederick Horniman was a tea merchant. His father was a tea merchant before him, so his ships would have gone all over the world fetching tea back to London to sell on. And I think a lot of those world collection of items he's got may have been from him going on trips on his sailing ships and bring back things that took his fancy. Next, I'm off window shopping. I'm not looking to buy, but I wanted to see all the Halloween decorations that are on sale. There were dealy boppers there to wear on your head, and big decorations to hang outside your house. And of course there's always mugs and things in the shape of pumpkins and ghosts and spiders. I like the fall wreaths and things like that, but I prefer to make my own. Glasses, cups, mugs, plates, bowls. We have Christmas plates and bowls and cups and stuff, but not for any other time of the year. I did like the look of that warm and cosy throw. I thought that was very nice. Next I go to the Canal Museum. Now, I've lived in London for 14 years and I didn't know this museum existed. It's in a side street not far from King's Cross. At the back of the museum you can see Battlebridge Basin, and you can see actual working or homes of canal barges. And then walking around the museum, there was lots of boards to read, there were lots of signs, and this one was warning children not to play on the banks because of the danger of drowning. And there's an actual canal barge that you can go on inside the museum. But the first thing I want to show you is this well. I was fascinated by this. They have a huge well in the museum, which is where they used to store ice. I thought, okay, so in the winter time they got ice from the river. But no, it came from Norway, shipped over to London and then stored, and there were two of these enormous wells. Ah yes, there's the canal barge, which I'm going to go on in a minute. But first of all, I was really reading all about Carlo Gatti, who, this really gets me, he walked from Switzerland to Paris and then couldn't make his fortune, so he continued on his way, presumably he found a ship somewhere in France, and came over to London, and where he did make his fortune. And he was the one that was storing the ice here and getting it from Norway, and eventually he started an ice cream business as well, and he was greatly involved in the canal barges because of getting the ice to different parts of London once it was there. And the horse and carts would come and carry them off and deliver them. And oh yes, I'm just about to go on the canal barge. The point of going on this barge was to see how families had to live. I mean, they look very pretty on the canal and stuff, but this area is where they'd store whatever they were transporting from place to place. But this area I'm now entering is where the family would live, and really that's tiny to say, you know, mom, dad and 3 kids lived. And it was showing that it wasn't really a glamorous life for them to do this. It was a way of eking out a meagre living at that time. And yeah, there's the stove. And that's just about it. Presumably they slept on those wooden benches or on the floor. And I can't imagine it would have been very warm in there either. And then onwards, you can see the ice cream cart reflecting Carlo Gatti's start in London. And then we go up the stairs. Oh, the guys in the museum asked me where I came from, and when I told them where I lived, they immediately came up with very interesting facts about the canals of London. We can see the highly decorated chests. These are sort of traditional crafts that they had on these barges. We saw the watering cans earlier on. This was the route of the Thames, and as I'm walking along here it was showing all different kinds of barges, which they seem to come in all different shapes and sizes, low, flat, long, but different. Machinery, I have to admit I didn't read that, so I can't tell you what that's about. I looked over the railing and it was showing pictures of the horses that would pull the barges, because the barges didn't have an engine and they would be pulled by a horse with a big rope attached to the front of the boat, and they'd walk along what they called a towpath at the side. So horses played a huge part. Ships would come to London and dock at the Thames, and then it was a very long way to get anything transported to the rest of the country, and that's why the canal barges came into being. This bit was showing the horses, the tools that we used to shoe the horse, and there was various bits of tack that they wear and all the different tools that they needed. It was showing that they took great care of the horses because they were so important. But without the horse, the canal barge wouldn't move, so clearly it was a really important part of the whole business of transporting things from place to place. This is more of the tack, they call it, that the horses wore, and then I peeked a glance out of this upstairs window so that I could look again at the canal barges in what they called the basin. There they are. They can get a lot of them docked side by side because of the fact that they're narrow and thin. It was a model of a lock to show you how they got the barges from a high bit to a low bit. There were screens up here, you could sit and watch shows giving you the history, and there was quite a few people actually sat watching these when I was up there, and I just had a walk around instead. It was only £7.50 to get into this museum, and most museums in London are free. Donations that a huge museum will get, and the amount of tourists is completely different to a tiny museum, which is just 2 big rooms. You can plait a horse's tail if you want to. And when I went inside, there was 3 old guys there, and honestly, they will tell you so many stories. They're such nice guys, so friendly. And it's lovely to have that kind of welcome in a museum, I think. So what did you think of that? Quite often these museums that are just a collection that somebody made during their lifetime can be a bit sort of random, and you never know what's around the next corner. The Canal Museum, it's not a very big museum, so as long as you're prepared for that, it's okay. But they do run some canal barge trips, which are only £16.50, which sounds really reasonable to get on a canal barge and go for a trip and back. I didn't do it because I was short on time, but they do a Christmas trip as well, which passes lights that are around the canal, which sounds very festive. Please like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend, and come back next time. Bye for now.